Right now on Morning News Now, eyes to the sky in Rome. Catholic cardinals return for the second day of voting. And just this morning, black smoke billowed from the Sistine Chapel's chimney for a second time. We have live team coverage at the Vatican with an inside look at the mysterious process as electors decide who will succeed Pope Francis. Also this morning, a British bargain. President Trump teases a big trade deal announcement later, calling it a very big and exciting day for the United States of America and the United Kingdom. Meanwhile, the president says he's not backing down on those tariffs on Chinese imports as officials from Beijing and Washington prepare to meet this weekend.
Are you open to pulling back your tariffs in order to get China to the negotiating table?
No.
We will have the latest from Washington. Plus, holding steady, the Federal Reserve leaves interest rates untouched for the third time in a row. Our friend Investopedia editor-in-chief Caleb Silver joins us in studio with more on what the central bank's decision means for borrowers and why officials are still warning about the possibility of higher unemployment and inflation. And finally this morning, saying I do at a discount. It's almost the start of wedding season, but this year things could look a little different as couples weigh the cost of extravagant nuptials. Really has gotten out of hand.
Finding some creative solutions there. Good to have you with us this morning. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers. We're going to begin this morning at the Vatican, where day 2 of the conclave to elect the next pope is underway. This morning we saw black smoke. That means after 3 votes, the cardinals have not yet chosen a new pope to lead the Catholic Church.
The 133 cardinal electors have since taken a break for lunch. They're going to resume voting later this afternoon with 2 more votes expected today. The last 2 popes were chosen on the second day of the conclave, so there's a lot of anticipation. Today could be that day. We're joined now by NBC News international correspondent Claudio Lavanga and NBC News contributor, Vatican correspondent for the National Catholic Reporter, Christopher White. Good to have both of you with us. So, Claudio, let's start with you. The secrecy of the conclave, that's what makes it so exciting. No TV, no social media, no internet. The only way the cardinals communicate with us is via smoke, which is released from the Sistine Chapel's chimney. How are folks in St. Peter's Square reacting to the smoke show so far?
Hey, Joe. Well, since yesterday, since the first round of voting, thousands of people have gathered in St. Peter's Square waiting for the smoke to come out of the chimney. The Vatican said that yesterday 45,000 people filled the square and the surrounding areas. They had to wait a long time. It was 3 hours between the closing of the doors of the Sistine Chapel and the first smoke, longer than usual, but they all waited patiently. And then in the end, there was a big round of applause because even though the smoke was black, so no pope was elected, they still feel part of this centuries-old tradition. They're now back into the square this morning again, black smoke, and we expect them to come back later in the afternoon because, as you mentioned, in the last 2 conclaves, the popes were elected on the second day of the conclave. So if that trend continues, we may have a pope by the end of today, Joe.
Christopher, we'd love for you to weigh in on that. Just the fact, each round so far has ended in this black smoke. Are those the results that you would have expected this early on in the conclave?
I think so. What it takes when they get inside that room is to cast an initial ballot to sort of see what the spread is. And then they go back in the second day, and that's when the numbers start getting serious. They start sort of lining up, and you see blocks emerge. And it's really on that second and third ballot where we're able to get a sense of, they're able to get a sense of where these votes might be headed. And, then they'll go and have lunch, and perhaps some deals will be made, and we'll see greater numbers start to coalesce behind 1 or 2 candidates.
Lester Holt was talking yesterday about how it felt like the last conclave, the smoke was kind of gray. They were like, wait, is that black or is that white? This is very black smoke. It is very clear they have not picked a pope, so I like that. Claudio, remind us now what this process will look like moving forward, what the schedule looks like for the rest of the conclave.
Well, every day the cardinals meet in the morning for 2 rounds of voting and in the afternoon for 2 rounds of voting. So this afternoon they'll meet for another 2 rounds of voting. Now, if they elect a pope on the first vote of the afternoon, for instance, then we'll see white smoke earlier in the afternoon. If not, they will wait until the second round of smoking for that smoke to come out from the chimney. So we may not see it before around 1 p.m. or 2 p.m. Eastern time. And then, so forth every day until they find a pope. But the thing is that after 3 days, if after 3 full days of conclave, they haven't reached an agreement and no cardinal elector has reached the 2/3 majority, they will take a day of pause, prayer, and reflection. In this particular case, it's going to be Sunday. But we'll see. Obviously, all eyes are on that chimney, so we'll see whether we have a pope before then.
Christopher, you mentioned that they're now on that lunch break, and that could be where deals are made, were the words you used. I think anyone who has seen the movie Conclave, I recently am a viewer of the movie. That's where a lot went down, was those meal times when there's really communication going on between all the cardinals. Just tell us what conversations might be taking place, what those time periods look like.
Well, there's no bribery. That's certainly expressly forbidden. But one of the things that these meal times provide is a chance for cardinals to get to know each other a bit better. And so a cardinal from Latin America can say, hey, could you bring over some cardinals from Africa or some cardinals from North America? And they provided them a chance to get to know each other, audition one another, and say, could we see this particular person being pope? Or what are the particular issues that are motivating you in this room? And that's how they began to kind of converge into groups, and that's why we see the numbers sort of trend in a certain direction as the days go on, because they have more time to do this sort of talking. And because of the vote counts being known among them, they know exactly the direction that they want or hope to be heading in.
Claudio, can you tell us more about just how they do make sure this remains such a super secret process? What are some of the steps they took to shield these cardinal electors from messages from the outside world?
Hey, Joe. Well, once those doors closed in the Sistine Chapel, they completely cut off from the outside world. There's no access to mobile devices and electronic devices, newspapers, radio, television. Also, the Vatican has taken down the signal of mobile signal inside Vatican State. They told us a couple of days ago, something that didn't go down well with the people living and actually working inside Vatican State. They said they're losing business like this. But anyway, this is going to happen until they elect a new pope. Also, when they return to the Casa Santa Marta and another building where they are staying, the windows have been blackened because some of the windows go on Main Street outside of Vatican City and so forth. So they are completely cut out of the outside world, Joe.
Christopher, if I could put you on the spot and you wouldn't mind, we just like hearing a little rundown of who may be some top contenders here. Walk us through what we're thinking at this point.
Sure. I think it's fair to say that the person with the most name recognition going into this conclave was Cardinal Pietro Parolin. He was Pope Francis's Secretary of State, so a real diplomat. He knows the global situation very well. And because he's so well known in a conclave where there are so many unknown figures, most people think if this is a short conclave, he's probably likely to emerge first. Filipino Cardinal Luis Tagle is someone who's been often talked about. He's sometimes called an Asian Pope Francis because of his concern for the poor and the simple way in which he lives. But I think the general consensus is the longer that this goes on, the greater the likelihood of a surprise candidate emerging, or some sort of consensus candidate if neither of those sort of big names get enough votes in the first rounds.
And Christopher, I know that we've had short conclaves recently. Is there a sense that this could be a little different because it's such a large group, because so many of the people didn't know each other coming into these past few weeks? You mentioned sort of the little auditions that might be going on during lunch.
It's really tough to say. I think on one hand, the cardinals are motivated to show unity. They don't want a long conclave because among many of them, they fear that it would project an image of a church divided, that it can't get its act together. On the other hand, I think, some of them in the final days leading into this conclave really said, we've got to take our time. This is, for many of us, the most important vote we'll cast in our lifetime. And so we should perhaps, tap the brakes a little bit to do the necessary work. So I think a 2-3 day conclave is likely, but I'm not putting any money on anything.
All right. Claudio and Christopher, thank you both for kicking off our coverage this hour. We appreciate it. In Washington, President Trump's new nominee for Surgeon General is raising some eyebrows. On Wednesday, the president abruptly withdrew his original pick for the position, Dr. Jeanette Neshwat. She was supposed to have her Senate confirmation hearing today. Mr. Trump decided to replace her instead with Dr. Casey Means, who has close ties to Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. NBC News White House correspondent Vaughn Hilliard joins us now with the latest on all things White House. So, Vaughn, we know Dr. Means is a wellness influencer. What else should we know about her, and why are we seeing this last-minute switch by the president?
Right. Just before this confirmation proceeding was about to begin, Dr. Neshwet, who received a lot of backlash from particularly the MAGA wing of our political sphere over her past support of masking during COVID, somebody who was a presence on Fox, but also is the sister-in-law of Michael Waltz, the former national security advisor. She was met with some scrutiny from close Trump allies. That is what led here to the switch to somebody who is an ally of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. You're seeing Dr. Casey Means, somebody who has promoted metabolic health, and that instead of the medical system, the pharmaceutical companies, that she contends take advantage of Americans on the back end of health crises. She says that the chronic health diseases in the United States need to be addressed on the front end, and that has to do with good energy and healthy eating and physical well-being. She is somebody who has derided the pharmaceutical companies, food companies, even medical institutions, suggesting that medical schools are not appropriately teaching medical students and incoming doctors to be the appropriate health care that Americans deserve and desire. She is somebody who we should note that her sibling, her brother, actually works as an advisor at HHS to Robert F. Kennedy Jr. So both of the Mean siblings who have big influencer followings are now both set, if she is to be confirmed, to be key members of this administration.
Yvonne, let's talk about the issue of immigration. A federal judge has now temporarily blocked a Trump administration move to deport a group of undocumented migrants to Libya using a military plane. What more are we learning about this?
Right, a federal judge intervening and saying that this would-be flight, the two officials tell NBC News, is slated to happen by week's end to go to Libya via a military Department of Defense aircraft, is not to take off. Notably, the attorneys for some of these detainees say that their clients, that these detainees are from places like Laos and the Philippines, and that sending them to Libya would prevent them from having 15 days to go before an immigration court, an immigration judge, to raise fear claims. The State Department, under this very Trump administration, warns Americans not to travel to Libya because of terrorism and threats of kidnapping. And there are serious questions as to the legality of sending individuals who are nationals from some of these other countries to places that had not previously been previously notified that they could be removed to. So the federal court intervened here, and at least for now is stepping in the way of this would-be potential flight. The president was asked about this yesterday at the Oval Office. He referred reporters to the Department of Homeland Security, who are not providing any further details to us at this time either, though.
All right, and Vaughn, I'm going to borrow a headline from Politico this morning. We do have white smoke on a trade deal. Looks like the president's going to announce a trade deal with the United Kingdom this morning. So what do we know? What can we expect?
Right. This is notable. There was a lot of questions as to when an actual trade agreement would come to fruition. The president has promised that his tariffs would amount to wins for the American consumer and the American industry. But he is indicating at 10 a.m. Eastern that he is going to announce this morning a trade agreement with the UK. There are no specifics. There are no details at this time. Typically, these sorts of trade negotiations take a year minimum, and so this could potentially be just the framework as the two sides work out greater details. But we should note that this would-be first trade agreement in the second Trump administration is with the UK, who the United States currently has an actual trading surplus with. He has targeted a great many countries for the U.S.'s trade deficit, but in this scenario, from 2023 to 2024, the actual trade surplus for the United States increased by more than 10%. The U.S., though, has placed tariffs during this administration on not only steel and aluminum, but automobiles coming from the U.K. So we will await to hear what these details of this announcement are later today, guys.
All right, Vaughn Hilliard in Washington. Vaughn, thank you.
Let's keep that conversation going with Investopeedia's editor-in-chief, Caleb Silver. Caleb, good morning. So Would that trade deal with the UK, how big of a deal is it? What's it mean for the economy, for consumers?
Yeah, if you're a Range Rover owner, Aston Martin owner, you might be happy about this. But we do import about $70 billion worth of goods from the UK, mostly cars, mostly medicine and pharma. You may have heard of GlaxoSmithKline. You may have heard of AstraZeneca. They make cancer drugs. So they are important to us. That said, as Vaughn mentioned, we actually have a surplus with the UK. So this is not one of those big leverage deals. This is kind of an easy layup for the administration. Still, it's a deal, and deals are good in terms of getting some clarity on where this tariff policy is going.
Let's talk about the Federal Reserve. As expected yesterday, interest rates holding steady. I think the news was really going to be, what's Jerome Powell going to say? We want to play a little bit of what he said during the news conference.
If the large increases in tariffs that have been announced are sustained, they're likely to generate a rise in inflation, a slowdown in economic growth, and an increase in unemployment. There's so much uncertainty about the scale, scope, timing, and persistence of the tariffs.
So clearly Powell is echoing the uncertainty we've been hearing for the last several weeks. Did we get any clues as to what the Fed's strategy could be moving forward?
Well, Powell said the word wait or waiting some 22 times during the press conference yesterday because they're waiting to see the effects of the tariffs or what the tariff policy is going to ultimately be like. They can't make monetary policy decisions until they know that. Why? Because if they do lower rates right now, it's just going to cause inflation, and we know higher prices are coming in the form of tariffs. We just don't know how high because of the uncertainty. So the Fed's in a tough place here. This morning, the president calling the Fed chair a fool, actually, on a social post. That's just not right. I mean, it's Powell who's taking the shots, but there's 12 members of the Federal Open Market Committee that are making these decisions based on data from the economy around the entire country right now. So the president doesn't like this at all, and he's watching other countries like the EU and the UK. I mean, the EU's lowered rates now 7 times. The Bank of England lowering rates this morning. The U.S. is not in the same position as those other countries. We are placing tariffs on imports.
Caleb, what's the advice here then for the American consumer with those rates holding steady?
Sadly, you have to wait, too, because rates aren't going anywhere for the near term. We're going to get another meeting in June, probably around 41 days and 6 hours and 20 minutes. You know the deal. And that meeting, maybe we'll see, but it's going to have to take a rise in unemployment for the Fed to want to lower interest rates to jumpstart the economy. Right now, we got that unemployment report last week. Unemployment's only at 4.2%. Inflation's kind of coming to where the Fed wants it. No need to make a move now. You still don't know what the impact of all these tariffs is going to be.
Caleb Silver, what would we do without you? Thank you very much, covering a lot of news for us. Thanks, Caleb.
A not guilty verdict out of Tennessee is making headlines this morning. 3 ex-Memphis police officers were acquitted on state charges in the beating death of Tyre Nichols. NBC News correspondent Priscilla Thompson has the latest in a warning. Some of the images you're about to see might be disturbing.
Counsel would like to stand with their clients.
3 ex-Memphis police officers charged in the 2023 beating death of Tyre Nichols acquitted.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Tadarius Bean, not guilty. Demetrius Haley, not guilty. Justice Smith, not guilty.
The former officers seen here hugging their attorneys and sobbing after being cleared of 7 state charges, including second-degree murder, stemming from this traffic stop. Body cam footage appearing to show officers kicking, punching, and batoning Nichols, who died from his injuries 3 days later, sparking nationwide protest.
Any fair-minded person who watches the video would come to the conclusion that everybody there had some responsibility for Tyre Nichols' death.
But members of the jury who were not from Memphis but brought in from the Chattanooga area disagreed, reaching that verdict after an 8-day trial that included testimony from fellow former officer Desmond Mills Jr., who testified for the prosecution in exchange for a plea deal, and Nichols' mother, who recalled seeing her son in the hospital.
My son was beaten to a pulp. His head was the size of a watermelon. His nose was broken.
The Nichols family attorney Ben Crump calling the verdict a devastating miscarriage of justice, writing, "We are outraged and we know we are not alone." Another officer, Emmett Martin III's state murder case was severed and has not yet gone to trial. All 5 former officers either pleaded guilty or were convicted of lesser charges in their federal case. They're expected to be sentenced this summer. Priscilla Thompson, NBC News.
Time now for a check at your forecast. We've got meteorologist Angie Lassman here.
Hey there, Angie. Good morning.
Hi, guys. Good morning to you. We've got a couple of busy days when it comes to rain in the forecast for a lot of folks across the east. Let's start with what we're dealing with right now, which is mostly quiet skies across parts of the Northeast and mainly the Great Lakes. But we do have some of those showers and even a couple of thunderstorms happening across parts of the Midwest. And this is going to ramp up as the day goes on. So you can already see that we've kind of got these preemptive flood alerts up for parts of the Northeast. And that's because we've got multiple days of some additional rain on the way. Here's how it all plays out. Today, it's from Massachusetts to Tennessee, where we could see some of that rain basically stretched along that cold front. We'll see some of those highest rainfall totals and the potential for flooding more in the interior areas of this region. And then tomorrow, we really ramp up this moisture and it kind of slides up the coast along the I-95 corridor. Expect really soggy conditions, specifically for the first half of the day, but even lingering into the evening hours as well. This is a pause at 7 o'clock. So you can see anywhere from Boston to Washington, D.C., the potential for some wet roads, likely some delays when it comes to the air travel as well. And rainfall rates are going to be pretty impressive, too. The good news is by the time we get into the later parts of our Saturday, specifically for areas New York and South, we'll see much drier conditions. But we will have some of that rain lingering across parts of New England. The periods of rain will stick with us for our Saturday. And left behind will be those elevated winds as well as those temperatures that are a little on the cooler side than what we've been dealing with. So get ready for a bit of a temperature drop for that region. When it's all said and done, I think at least through Saturday, we'll pick up a good dose of rain, maybe 2-3 inches for the more widespread areas, but up to 4 inches in some of those isolated spots. Temperature-wise, we've got a kind of a mixed bag here. Temperatures in the 50s for Chicago today, below normal. We're above normal out west for Salt Lake City, head into the upper 70s. Even Raleigh expected to hit the 80s today. And then we keep that going for tomorrow. We see more kind of aggressive temperatures when it comes to warmth across parts of the Southwest, with highs into those triple digits for Phoenix, mid-70s for Little Rock. Those numbers are below normal, even stretching up into Boston. We'll see temperatures in the low 30s. But Minneapolis, 84 degrees for tomorrow. So it'll feel a little bit more like summer for our friends there. But notice the temperature trends for places like New York as we get into the weekend. We'll drop back to the 60s. We'll get back to the 70s by Sunday, and then we'll kind of moderate out into those low 70s for Monday. 70s across the board through the weekend and into early next week for Charlotte. 80s or near 80 at least hold steady for Indianapolis as we get through Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. And then we got to keep those summer-like temperatures, or at least mild spring-like temperatures across parts of the central and northern plains as we get into next week, guys. It'll be 87 degrees in Sioux Falls and hanging out into the mid-80s by Monday. So it's essentially a mixed bag.
There you go. But you're dressed like spring, summer.
Yes, because I'm manifesting what I want, which is
dress for the job you want, not the job you have.
Exactly.
No mixed bag here.
No mixed bag. Spring, summer.
Thanks, Angie. We'll see you in an hour. Well, later today, we are set to get a first look at the Transportation Department's plan to improve the U.S. air traffic control system that's been causing massive headaches for travelers. It comes, of course, after these massive delays at Newark Airport. And even though that seemed to get a little bit better yesterday, the FAA says fixing all these problems could take years. NBC News senior correspondent Tom Costello brings us the latest.
Yeah, good morning. So we have seen some improvement here at Newark Airport. Yesterday, 88 flights canceled, 125 delays, a vast improvement from where we were last week and for the last 2 weeks. In some cases, delays for arriving flights up to 14 hours. United Airlines alone says roughly half of their flights have been delayed over the last few weeks. Today, DOT Secretary Sean Duffy holding a meeting in Washington with airline CEOs who want to see some improvement here at Newark Airport. And the CEO of United Airlines is saying simply there are too many flights coming into this airport, and the FAA needs to regulate the slots, the takeoff and landing slots at Newark, as they do at JFK, at LaGuardia, at Reagan National Airport. We'll see what they announce in Washington today, but the secretary also expected to unveil a big plan to overhaul the nation's air traffic control system from coast to coast, right? We're talking about equipment. We're talking about, again, trying to deal with getting more controllers into the academy. But the overhaul will take years and literally billions upon billions of dollars. So that's the priority in Washington today. Separately, they continue to announce short-term steps here at Newark to deal with the issues immediately. They're talking about improving the telecom lines that carry the radar data from New York down to the Philadelphia TRACON, which manages the air airspace here. Also, they're talking about trying to back up the TRACON radar data so they don't have radars going down, and relying more on trainees who are certified in one position, working on certification in another position, relying on them more as they try to ensure they've got enough people to handle the airspace here at Newark. Again, we're not talking about the tower, not the runways here. We're talking about the airspace above the tower that's controlled by the TRACON terminal radar approach, which is in Philadelphia. So a busy day. We're hoping to see some announcements for how they can improve things. Back to you.
All right, Tom Costello, thank you.
Much more to come here on Morning News Now. Later this hour, blue butterflies, how scientists are trying to help these beautiful insects, which are now extinct, make a comeback.
Up first, though, brink of war. Nuclear neighbors India and Pakistan continue to trade blows overnight. We'll have the latest on the escalating hostilities. You're watching Morning News Now.
We are back with the fallout from those deadly strikes on Pakistan launched by India. Overnight, Pakistan claimed it shot down 12 Indian drones. India has not commented on those claims as tensions continue to rise between the two countries. We get the latest from NBC News chief foreign correspondent Richard Engel.
India and Pakistan are trading blows in an alarming clash between the nuclear-armed nations that could spiral into a new open war. It escalated dramatically, with India carrying out military strikes against at least 9 targets it described as terrorist infrastructure in Pakistani territory, and releasing these new images of the operation. India said it's a response to a terrorist attack last month that killed 26 tourists in the Indian-controlled part of Kashmir. India quickly blamed Pakistan for the attack.
It was deemed essential that the perpetrators and planners of the 22nd April attack be brought to justice.
But the Pakistani government denies involvement and says its civilians were killed by an unprovoked act of war by India. Pakistan claims to have shot down 5 Indian fighter jets while they were attacking. The core of the issue is, and has long been, the region of Kashmir, which is partitioned. Each side claims all of the disputed region for itself. President Trump is calling for de-escalation.
I know both very well, and I want to see them work it out. I want to see them stop. And hopefully they can stop now. They've gone tit for tat, so hopefully they can stop now.
And our thanks to Richard Engel for that report.
We're joined now by Christopher Clary for more on the violent history between these two countries. He's an associate professor of political science at the University of Albany. Thank you very much for joining us. Good morning. So this tension between India and Pakistan, it has existed for decades, long before the countries became independent. Just take us back to how it started.
You know, when the British left, they decided that there should be 2 countries and what used to be 1 country, British India. And that was a messy process. The partition between the two was very violent as Hindus and Muslims and Sikhs and other religious minorities moved back and forth. But the core controversy that arose was over the region of Kashmir, which is a Muslim majority region that is predominantly administered by India. But Pakistan also has a chunk that it got during the first India-Pakistan War in 1947 through 48.
Why is it that the people in the Kashmir region don't simply vote to be part of India or Pakistan? Why is that not a possibility? What makes it more complicated than that?
You know, India took the matter to the UN because it said Pakistan invaded Indian territory in 1947. The UN encouraged both countries to pull their militaries out, India leaving a small shell force, and then maybe have a vote, you know, a plebiscite to determine which way Kashmir would go. But that withdrawal process was hard to manage. The U.S. actually spent years and years trying to do that in the 50s. And the result is that plebiscite issue has gone away. There have been 4 wars, total, 3 after that first one. And in the last 30 years more, there's been a pretty violent insurgency in Kashmir that India has worked to get under control, but is still not fully under control.
What have the governments in both countries been saying about this?
Pakistan says the Kashmiris have their own grievances, and maybe a local Kashmiri was responsible for this pretty horrific terrorist attack that occurred at the end of April. India says that's nonsense, and that Kashmiri insurgents, terrorists, would only function with some sort of backing from the Pakistani state. The U.S. government, most outside observers indicate that there is real support from Pakistan of these Kashmiri insurgent groups. But the disagreement is about the scale. And then for any individual attack, it's unclear whether there are fingerprints that go back to Pakistan. Nonetheless, India felt the evidence was good enough that it needed to punish Pakistan and launch these retaliatory missile and airstrikes yesterday.
Professor, we've been discussing how this has long gone on for decades now. There's actually officially been 4 major wars between India and Pakistan, largely over disputes this same region about Kashmir. Of course, the big concern here is, does this current dispute escalate? And then even a step further than that, could that lead to other countries being drawn into this conflict? What's your take on that? How concerned are you about something like that happening?
I think we still have some violence ahead in this current crisis. India did 1 round of missile and airstrikes. Overnight, it appears, India alleges, and Pakistan also indicates that there may have been some trading of drone strikes. The Indian drone strikes are quite visible on social media, and the Pakistani government has said that it killed a Pakistani civilian and injured some Pakistani military personnel. So I think it is very likely that Pakistan will strike back with conventional weapons of its own. The prospect of a war is still distant, but I think, sadly, many Indians and Pakistanis may die before this crisis is over.
Christopher Clary, thank you very much for joining us this morning, teaching us about this important stuff. Thanks.
Coming up, is it a technological breakthrough or a risk to our security?
Up next, we're going to look at the new eye scanning tool. It's backed by OpenAI co-founder Sam Altman. It's dividing the tech world, though. We'll tell you about it. You're watching Morning News Now. We are back with a look at a futuristic new device making its U.S. debut and promising to prove you are who you say you are, a human in a world that's increasingly influenced by AI, bots, and deepfakes. Well, it is backed by OpenAI CEO Sam Altman, and while it's being hailed for its innovation, it is also raising some serious privacy concerns. NBC News correspondent Camila Bernal takes a look.
So this is our beautiful new flagship in West Hollywood.
It's stepping into the future.
This is the Orb. It looks very cool, but it's basically just a fancy camera that's able to look at you and tell whether you're a real human or not.
You heard that right. In a world of deepfakes and online bots snagging the best deals, this shiny chromed white ball or camera could help prove that you're a human. That's the concept behind World, an open infrastructure co-founded by Sam Altman of OpenAI and architect of ChatGPT.
We wanted a way to make sure that humans stayed special and central in a world where the internet was going to have lots of AI-driven content.
Tiago Sada is the chief product officer at Tools for Humanity.
It's called World App.
The primary contributor to World.
You can simply say here, you want to verify your World ID. So tap on that.
It looks like something out of an episode of Netflix's Black Mirror. And I had my doubts, but I tried it. You first have to download an app.
It'll take a picture of your face and your eyes.
Show the QR code.
So you just look at the golden dot.
Then the photo and eye scan.
All right, so it's all set. And so now here on your phone, it's telling you the orb is right now verifying your humanity.
The data is then sent to your phone. The idea is that it can be used on dating apps, video games, or when buying concert tickets, proving that it is in fact a person, not a machine.
AI is amazing, right? We now get to do many things that we couldn't do before. But one of the problems is that when everything can be faked, we don't know who and what to trust.
More than 12 million people have already done this.
And I'm one of these people that I just get so frustrated with passwords all the time. I have like a zillion passwords. If I could do it just once, my face, I'm done.
And in exchange,
You could,
I could claim my money.
Yes, exactly.
those of us who do it get paid in a cryptocurrency called WorldCoin.
So
it's worth $35.17.
And it goes up and down depending on how people do it.
In the future, Tools for Humanity hopes to charge a small fee to the website or companies that use it to verify their customers. But right now, it's not making any money. Another possible roadblock, privacy concerns.
And so what's really going to be key is how is that data held? How is it stored? How is it transferred? Is it deleted immediately?
World says that anyone who does this, including me, can delete the information at any point.
Okay, what is the privacy aspect of it? I know they mentioned that they deleted off their platform, but it's always going to be like something to wonder about.
And governments in some countries where it's rolled out have already banned or imposed fines on the tech, saying it runs afoul of local data privacy and currency regulations. On Monday, a court in Kenya giving World 7 days to delete the biometric data gathered from its citizens. Tools for Humanity says it's engaging with regulators worldwide and is working through the challenges and will keep building. Adding, pioneering technologies always face regulatory scrutiny. It's part of meaningful innovation.
At the end of the day, you only have 2 eyes and 1 face, so we have to make sure we protect that.
But the startup claims we might just need it, because the future isn't just knocking, it's staring us down.
Fascinating and a little scary. Our thanks to Camila Bernal for that report.
A dangerous TikTok trend is forcing schools to take action. Students are actually intentionally trying to set their Chromebook laptops on fire. This reckless challenge is putting kids and classrooms at risk. NBC News correspondent Rahema Ellis has more.
It's the disturbing TikTok trend putting kids in danger in classrooms across multiple states. A growing number of videos posted to TikTok and other platforms in recent days, appearing to show kids sticking school supplies like pencils and paper clips in their Chromebooks, sparking electrical fires and releasing toxic smoke. One incident at Connecticut's Newington High School forcing an evacuation.
It became clear that the damage was done intentionally, that it wasn't a malfunctioning Chromebook, but rather a student had intentionally done things to it that caused it to smoke and eventually melt.
Thankfully, no one at the school was injured. But the town's fire marshal, DJ Zordan, telling us it's not just the fire that poses a threat. What is the potential danger these students might be putting themselves and others in?
There is a risk of electrocution, depending on what you're inserting into these laptops. If there's a fire, it's producing toxic smoke. We don't want people breathing that stuff. The lithium batteries are volatile. So if it does explode, there's a potential that you're going to injure people around you.
At least 2 other schools in the state also reporting Chromebook fires.
The hallways filling with smoke. We went in and ended up finding a laptop in a classroom that was pretty much out but on fire at one point.
Ready? Yeah.
The trend popping up in classrooms from coast to coast. Last October, a school district in Washington posting online saying a student started a Chromebook fire with a pen. There's no one clear reason why students are doing this. One of the videos simply reading, quote, anything but work. Zordan says parents have to educate their children on the dangers involved.
Talk about this, explain the hazards, so that way we can try to prevent this from happening.
A spokesperson for TikTok telling NBC News these videos are not exclusive to their platform and saying search terms like Chromebook challenge have been blocked. Google, which makes the operating systems for Chromebooks, did not respond to our request for comment, as school administrators now promise to crack down on the students responsible.
For a student who would do that deliberate destruction of school property, they will have a very serious consequence.
Our thanks to Rahema Ellis for that report.
Well, coming up, I do want to save some cash.
Up next, we're going to look at some of the creative ways couples are cutting costs on their big day. That's when we come back. We're back with a look at how love does not have to break the bank. With wedding prices skyrocketing from flowers to food to venues, couples are now getting creative, hoping to cut costs. The wedding planning site Zola says the average wedding now tops $36,000. Megan Miller from our affiliate station in Fort Myers shows us why more couples are skipping the traditional big day and are still getting their happily ever after.
It's a Monday afternoon at the Lee County Clerk of Court's office.
We're actually in what I call the happy part of the building.
While most of the world is in the middle of their workday, Anthony Metz and Laura Perez are getting married.
Who's ringing? We have our family here with us.
And we're super happy being here together.
By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride.
It may not be the ceremony some couples dream of.
We decided here because it was a little bit on the cheaper side. At some point, we want to have a party up in Michigan too, like a ceremony there.
After getting engaged, many start to wrestle with the decision between having a big wedding or using that money for something like a down payment on a house.
Wanted to save a little bit of money, use it on a trip, use it on things that we need.
The clerk's office is seeing a big boom in people coming here to say I do. Instead of dishing out upwards of $30,000, you can have a small ceremony with 15 people for $30.
Perfect.
They get dressed up in their wedding whole outfits. Like they bring the gowns and the tuxedos and the flower girls. I mean, I don't think people realize that we actually offer this service.
I just planned a wedding myself and can tell you venues here on the Gulf Coast start at around $5 grand.
Then you have the food and stuff like that. So by the end of it, when everything's all said and done, yeah, it's going to be expensive for anybody.
To dive deeper into why wedding prices keep rising, I sat down with Brittany Gibson.
I watched The Wedding Planner with J-Lo when I was growing up, and I knew I wanted to be a wedding planner.
She owns Florida Wedding Design and has a podcast called Wed Zen.
I am all about creating calm in the chaos because wedding planning can be chaotic.
She says one reason for rising costs is the social media effect.
Now with social media, I think that weddings have become Instagram worthy and TikTok worthy.
Brittany got married 10 years ago. She says her 80-person wedding cost her and her husband about $25,000.
Now I'm working with budgets $80,000 to $250,000. There's just so much of a production nowadays. I have a bride bringing me an arch from Instagram that her friend got married and she loves it. This arch alone is $5,000. So how much money do you have to spend?
There are also factors like inflation and now expected ripple effects from new tariffs.
Florals, for example. A lot of flowers don't come from America. They're coming from overseas. So, we are seeing where the cost of flowers is increasing, and so then that cost is having to increase to the consumer.
Heather Barkis, who owns Pure Bridal, is doing everything she can to avoid that. She's even in the process of moving her store to a more affordable location.
It's life. Every year, everything gets more expensive, unfortunately. I have been selling a lot of my gowns off the rack just to help brides save a little money, but still get their hands on a beautiful designer dress.
One trend Brittany and Heather say you can look into to keep the overall cost down: micro weddings.
The great thing about that is your food and beverage is going to be a lot lower because you're only feeding 30 people opposed to 150 or 200 people. So instantly you're saving money by having a smaller group of people. That allows you to make the experience go further with your dollars.
And don't get married to the idea of a weekend wedding.
So if you're open to hosting on a Thursday or Friday, you will save some money.
Brittany's #1 tip: set a budget right away, then subtract $5,000 to avoid going over it.
You can still plan a nice wedding with whatever budget that you have. You just have to prioritize and do what's right for you and pick the venue first.
And remember, you can get married anywhere.
I'm super happy. Really. It's a blast, all this now. And I'm super proud of you.
Yeah, I'm proud of you too.
We're proud of them. Our thanks to Megan Miller for that story.
We've got more money news for you now. Toyota is clearing the air on how President Trump's tariffs might impact price tags.
NBC Savannah now has that and some other Wall Street headlines. Savannah, good morning.
Hey, Joe. Hey, Savannah. Good morning to you. Yep. So Toyota is not considering price hikes for vehicles sold in the U.S., well, at least in the short term, and that's despite President Trump's tariffs on Japan and foreign-made cars. Toyota expects profits to drop by more than 20% this year as a weaker dollar and impact of tariffs weigh on the automaker. Toyota does make some of its cars at plants here in the U.S., but also in Mexico. Tesla's attempt to trademark the term robotaxi has been rejected by the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office because the term is too generic, according to a new filing. Applications from Tesla for the term cybercab have been halted because other companies are pursuing similar cyber trademarks, including one that sells aftermarket parts and accessories for the Cybertruck. Tesla applied for the trademarks last October on the same day it unveiled the Cybercab. And Nintendo expects to sell 15 million units of its new Switch 2 console over the next year. Now, the company is launching the Switch 2 on June 5th, and it could test Nintendo's ability to manage supply chains to minimize disruptions from President Trump's trade war. The Switch 2 is the successor to the Switch, which has sold more than 150 million units since its launch in 2017, guys. I know it's going to be on a lot of kids' Christmas lists.
Yeah, very popular.
It'll be a little more expensive this year. Silvana, thank you. Yeah. All right, a twisted legal saga involving a former Bachelor contestant is making headlines. This time, this is off the screen, though. An Arizona woman is now facing 7 felony charges after being accused of faking a pregnancy and using a phony ultrasound to file a false paternity claim against season 26 star Clayton Echard. NBC News correspondent Steve Patterson spoke with him about the case.
Former Bachelor star Clayton Echard speaking out.
Her whole goal was to overwhelm victims into not being able to function.
After Arizona prosecutors say a woman falsely accused him of getting her pregnant and then filed a bogus paternity claim. Laura Michelle Owens indicted on 7 felony counts, including forgery, evidence tampering, and perjury. Investigators say she used a fake ultrasound image, fabricated a pregnancy video, and lied multiple times under oath before dropping her child support claim, alleging she had a miscarriage.
You're seeing an ultrasound that you know is not truthful. What was that like?
I had this thought at one point that I was either dealing with the craziest person I'd ever met or I was dealing with someone that was telling the truth in a very unlikely scenario because we never had sexual intercourse.
Owens' attorney has not responded to an NBC News request for comment.
I'm a Midwest boy from Missouri that just wants to find love.
Echard stealing hearts on season 26 of The Bachelor, but also catching flack for leaving the 2 finalists behind for another contestant who had already departed.
I was in love with her, and I was in love with each of you too. I am in love with both of you.
There were a lot of people that wanted to see me fail and wanted me to pay for what I had done, and I think that put a target on my back.
Echard says Owens watched the show. After initially meeting online, the 2 met up in person. Owens has a high-profile background herself. Her father, Ron Owens, is a Radio Hall of Famer from San Francisco. But things started to get strange, Echard says, as soon as Owens told him she was pregnant.
She actually even created a dating contract that she sent to me. I think it was via DocuSign. And said that if you date me, I will have the abortion, but if you don't date me, I'm having the kids.
Clayton says he eventually got hundreds of messages from her rotating numbers.
As I blocked her on 12 numbers, the 13th number was at that point I had finally gotten a injunction against harassment to stop her. Victims are victims no matter what their sex, gender, race is. I just think that if you're a perpetrator, you should be held accountable.
Quite a story there. Thanks to Steve Patterson for that report. Echard says the entire experience was emotionally draining, but he's relieved to finally have closure. The woman accused in the case is now awaiting trial.
Coming up, blue is back in San Francisco.
Next, we'll show you how a group of scientists is working to reintroduce blue butterflies to the city. Stay with us. Welcome back. We are going to end this hour with a story about second chances, not for people, but for a species once thought to be lost forever.
In San Francisco, scientists and volunteers are working to bring back a bit of nature that vanished decades ago. Here's NBC News Now anchor Gotti Schwartz.
In this corner of San Francisco's Presidio National Park, there's a blue fluttering of a butterfly effect 80 years in the making. This is the story of the Xerxes blue, the first American butterfly to go extinct because of human development.
That's a female. It's a beauty.
The California Academy of Sciences now hoping to reintroduce these silvery blue cousins to the ecosystem to act as crucial pollinators. They are the closest genetic relatives found just miles away.
Just by moving it from one habitat with permission to another,
We're trying to restart a blue butterfly population here in the Presidio.
So fix a problem that humans made.
Yeah, we're basically fixing a problem that humans caused.
It's important to remember that over a century ago, before the Golden Gate Bridge, before the gold rush even, this was the natural habitat for about half of the city of San Francisco. Sand dunes teeming with life. And in this fragile ecosystem,
this is like a blue sign of hope. There they go.
There they go.
Oh,
wow. In the dawn of this new age of bringing back dire wolves or creating woolly mice, for now, here the simplest solution is found in nature.
It's not about bringing back a velociraptor. It's like, is there a missing function that we really need? And is there a way to put that back in the landscape? It's like matchmaking, reweaving the web of life one species at a time.
Gadi Schwartz, NBC News, the Presidio, San Francisco.
That is so cool.
Incredible, some of the things they're doing to bring back some of these species.
It really is.
That's going to do it for this hour. Morning News Now.
Don't go anywhere. The news continues right now. Good morning. Happy Thursday. I'm Savannah Sellers.
I'm Joe Fryer. We have a lot of ground to cover this hour, so let's get to it. We're starting with a live look at St. Peter's Square this morning. Just hours ago, black smoke billowed from the chimney of the Sistine Chapel, signaling to the world's billion-plus Catholics that a new pope has not yet been named. We're going to bring you the latest from the Vatican in just a moment. Back home, a trade war breakthrough expected from the White House this morning. President Trump teasing the announcement of a trade deal with the United Kingdom. Took to Truth Social earlier this morning, calling this deal the first of many. Got details on that as the Federal Reserve issues a dire new warning on the long-term impact of economic uncertainty. Plus, even Mom is not immune to the White House's tariff turbulence this year. Those classic Mother's Day flower bouquets might cost last-minute shoppers a little extra green. A reminder, it's this Sunday. And it's a mega popular post-workout trend, something many influencers and celebs swear by. New research shows the cold plunge might not be worth it for women. Diving into the science behind it all later in the hour. Not a chance would ever.
Okay, I did it once, and I
didn't do it again.
That's right. I did feel kind of awesome after.
Okay.
But the hype of getting into it was the whole, I made everybody around me crazy. It was a drama. I probably won't do it again.
We'll get into the science coming up a little later. Of course, we want to start this morning at the Vatican. Day 2 of the conclave to elect the next pope is underway. Earlier today, it was black smoke that billowed from the chimney of the Sistine Chapel. For a second time since the conclave began, that means the cardinals have not yet picked a new pope to lead the Catholic Church.
The 133 cardinal electors have since taken a break for lunch. They will resume voting later this afternoon with 2 more votes expected before the day's over. Get this, so the last 2 popes were appointed on this second day of the conclave, so there is much anticipation that today could be the day.
For more analysis, let's bring in Professor Kathleen Spose Cummings. She is director of the Cushwa Center for the Study of American Catholicism at the University of Notre Dame. She's also the author of several books, including A Saint of Our Own, How the Quest for a Holy Hero Helped Catholics Become American. Great to have you with us again, Professor, to talk about everything that's going on. So we've only seen black smoke after the first few days. That means, 3 votes so far? Are those the results you expected this early in the conclave?
Absolutely. I would have been very surprised if we had white smoke this morning. There hasn't been a pope elected on 3 ballots since 1939, and it was a very different situation than when there was a clear front runner. And so I think possibly later today, but I also won't be surprised if it goes on for at least another day.
Kathleen, this is the biggest, the most diverse conclave in history. We've talked a little bit with you, including yesterday, about how that could impact the election in terms of what direction the church ultimately ends up going. But I think also it means, right, that there's a lot of getting to know each other going on, a lot of conversations that maybe could mean this takes a little bit longer just because it's going to take a minute for there to sort of be these blocks that emerge. What feels different about this one to you?
Absolutely. There's 18 more people voting in this conclave than in 2013. They don't know each other very well. They're coming from all corners of the globe. And there was no really clear front runner. So, we don't know yet, But whatever happened on the first vote yesterday evening would have been very telling. Who has a critical mass of votes? Was there a name that nobody was talking about that appeared several times? So a lot was clear, at least in the minds of the cardinal electors last night. Of course, we don't know yet. So, these morning's votes would have been equally telling. The lunch conversations happening at the Casa Santa Marta now are probably very interesting as they are zeroing in on a candidate. But again, it might take a lot of time to get to that magic number of 89.
This group of electors looks different from, of course, the one that elected Pope Francis. And also many of them were actually picked by Pope Francis. So do you think his legacy is going to have a big impact on these deliberations?
Absolutely. They're talking about all aspects of his papacy, but just to start, the global nature of this conclave, more global than anyone ever before. This is the first time that European cardinals are a minority of voters. They're about 40%, whereas in 2013 they were 51%. So that's pretty significant. That's not ruling out the possibility that a European or even an Italian could be elected. But if that's the case, that man will have to have really a global sensibility and understanding of the global church. Pope Francis was a global pope for a global church, and I think anyone who follows in his footsteps is going to have to understand that as well. There are other ways they're talking about what's needed. Pope Francis's emphasis on accompaniment, on a very pastoral approach, as opposed to perhaps a more doctrinal approach. That's something they're also considering.
Kathleen, you've written extensively about the role of women in Catholic history in the church. They are barred from voting in the conclave, which is reserved for male cardinals. But what do you hope to see as far as any signals a New Hope could send about the role of women in the Catholic Church? And how much do you think that that's maybe a conversation or a consideration, maybe like either way that it could go for these cardinals that are voting and sort of the progressive nature of a decision like that?
Pope Francis did more than any of his predecessors to promote women's leadership in the church. One of the most significant changes was when he revised the Roman Curia, the Vatican bureaucracy. He separated ordination from leadership in the sense that he made it possible for a lay person, a non-ordained person, including, of course, women, to head a dicastery, to hold high office. And he himself has appointed women to very high leadership positions in the Vatican. That can change. What my hope is, and the hope of many in the church, is that the next pope will continue to expand women's leadership opportunities, but he doesn't have to do that. So we'll have to wait and see.
Professor Kathleen Sprouse Cummings, as always, we appreciate your time and your expertise. Thanks for joining us again this morning.
Thank you.
Let's now bring in NBC News international correspondent Claudio Lavanga. He's live at the Vatican for us. Claudio, good morning. So first, we're wondering, as somebody who is there on the ground, what sort of conversations you've been having with people who have come to see this process, what the reaction has been like each time that smoke has billowed out. Everybody's watching. Is it black? Is it white? What are the people saying on the ground?
Hey, Savannah. Well, there are thousands of people that turned up last night. Actually, 45,000, the Vatican says, that were here in St. Peter's Square and the surrounding area waiting for that first smoke. They waited a long time. It was like 3 hours between the closing of the Sistine Chapel and the doors of the Sistine Chapel and the first black smoke. But they were all at some stages clapping. They were happy to be there because they understand they are part of a centuries-old incredible tradition. And this is really a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, especially for people who don't live in Rome and don't live in Italy, because there's a lot of them here. It is Jubilee year, so pilgrims would have planned this trip, especially for this year, specifically for this reason. So they just happen to be here at a historic time. And we'll expect them, of course, to come back later in the afternoon, because we have 2 more rounds of voting, and then we'll have more smoke later today, Savannah.
And to remind folks, it's 2 rounds of voting, but it'll only be 1 thing of smoke, assuming the first vote is a no Pope vote. We won't see smoke. It would be the second vote where we'll either see white or black, depending on what happens there. Claudio, these smoke shows have been happening a little later than people had expected or predicted. Do we have any idea of why that might be? Is it the size of this group that it's taking longer? Is it the age of the group? Each of them has to walk up one by one to cast their votes. Any idea what's happening?
Hey, Joe, well, that's right. I mean, last night it took 3 hours for the smoke to appear, and that is an hour longer than anybody expected it. So there's a lot of theories there. I mean, What happens in the conclave stays in the conclave. It's all secretive, so probably we'll never know the real reason. But there are some theories. You know, it is 133 cardinals. It is a lot more people that need to vote than previous conclaves when there were like 115 and 117. Also, 80% of these cardinals were newly appointed by Pope Francis, so this will be their first conclave, so maybe they needed, explanations and so forth. But we probably never know, Joe.
Claudia, the last two popes, they were appointed on the second day of the conclave. I think that has people sort of like, ooh, are we going to see it today then? Is there an expectation that there could be a similar result today, or do we just not know?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the last two conclaves happened on the second day in the evening, so a lot of people think if that trend continues, then, we may have a pope by tonight. So I do expect a lot more people to show up tonight than the 45,000 that we saw last night. That's not for certain, but, all we have to do is just wait, see, and just keep an eye on the chimney behind me.
Claudio, thank you for your continued reporting. We'll talk to you soon. Well, President Trump says he will announce a trade deal with the United Kingdom later this morning, describing it as, quote, the first of many. It comes after the Federal Reserve warned about the long-term impact of the president's tariffs on the economy and on business. NBC News senior White House correspondent Garrett Haake joins us. Hey, Garrett, good morning.
Hey, Savannah, good morning to you. And look, the president's been eager to prove his theory that tariffs will force U.S. trading partners to the table to strike more favorable deals with the United States. Today, he'll announce his first such agreement with the United Kingdom, but it comes amid growing concern about the economic pain those tariffs may cause in the months ahead. And as talks with China, our biggest trade partner, are only just beginning. This morning, the first deal in President Trump's tariff-fueled trade war. The president saying the U.S. has reached a, quote, full and comprehensive agreement with the United Kingdom, and saying more deals will come as the U.S. works to negotiate with bigger trading partners like Canada and China. The announcement coming just days after the president flashed frustration over continued questions about when he'd strike deals that might mitigate his disruptive tariffs.
Everyone says, when are you going to sign deals? We don't have to sign deals. They have to sign deals with us.
The White House also facing a stark new warning about the possible long-term effects of the tariffs from the chairman of the Federal Reserve.
They're likely to generate a rise in inflation, a slowdown in economic growth, and an increase in unemployment.
Overnight, the White House trying to reassure Americans.
People don't have to be worried about what the scaremongers are saying.
It comes as Europe prepares to unveil new retaliatory measures against U.S. exporters today. And trade talks between the Treasury Secretary and Chinese negotiators are set to take place this weekend.
As President Trump has stated, he will have the final decision on any trade agreement.
The president saying he will not lower tariffs on China beforehand. But overnight, China saying if the U.S. wants to negotiate, it must be prepared to lift tariffs. A breakthrough with China can't come soon enough for many American businesses who rely on Chinese factories to make their products, like baby gear brand Colugo.
The important thing to know is 97% of strollers are manufactured in China. So this is
97%?
Yes, all strollers are made in China.
Colugo has already raised stroller prices 10% in response to the tariffs. But with the current 145% tax on Chinese imports, they simply can't afford to bring in new products at any price point.
We're not placing additional orders for products because the 145% tariff is truly not something we can swallow.
President Trump asked about a possible tariff exemption for family essentials.
I don't know. I'll think about it. I'm not looking to have so many exemptions that nobody knows what's doing.
So how much will this deal announced today really matter? The UK is our 11th largest trading partner. We just do far less business with the Brits than we do with countries like Canada or Mexico or especially China. And because our trade with the British was already fairly balanced, meaning we typically sell them actually a little bit more in goods than they sell us every year, a trade surplus, the tariffs that President Trump had placed on the UK were already low. So this deal demonstrates progress, sure, and it will provide some tariff relief. But unless and until there's a deal with China, consumers should still brace for disruptions and for higher prices. Savannah?
All right, Garrett Haake, thank you.
Police say at least 80 pro-Palestinian protesters were detained at Columbia University Wednesday night. It was one of the biggest campus protests against the war in Gaza since last year. Demonstrators had taken over a room at the university's Butler Library, repeating long-standing demands that the university divest from Israel and companies that say they are benefiting from Israel's invasion of Gaza. The protesters were flanked by police as they exited the library with their hands behind their backs in zip ties. In a statement, Columbia's acting president said that staff had repeatedly asked protesters to leave before calling in the NYPD, and said 2 campus officers were injured in a crowd surge.
Well, later today, the Transportation Department is set to unveil a sweeping new plan to overhaul the nation's air traffic control system. The move comes as issues with both staffing and technology have been causing headaches for travelers out of Newark Liberty International Airport. NBC News senior correspondent Tom Costello has more.
Good day. We did see some improvement here at Newark yesterday. In total, 88 flights canceled, 125 delays. The DOT secretary is calling together airline CEOs how they can mitigate delays nationwide. But the focus clearly is on Newark Airport. The FAA already taking some steps here with air traffic control, while today they're announcing a major plan to overhaul the entire ATC system nationwide. As air traffic controllers manage more than 45,000 daily flights nationwide, they're dealing with decades-old technology and significant staffing shortfalls. To address the challenges, the DOT set to announce an ambitious multi-billion-dollar plan to modernize the country's ATC infrastructure. The effort expected to take several years to complete.
We need to build a brand new air traffic control system.
That announcement as the FAA is taking what it says are immediate steps to improve reliability at Newark International, where over the last couple of weeks, United Airlines, which uses Newark as a major hub, saw more than 9% of its flights in and out canceled, more than half delayed. At issue, several controllers are on leave, citing mental stress after both radios and radars dropped out last week.
They may lose you on for certain times of when you're flying.
And controllers say it is not the first time, with a FedEx plane drifting into LaGuardia airspace last fall after Newark controllers lost all comms. Is Newark an exception in terms of the vulnerabilities here, or are other cities and other airports just as vulnerable?
I think what we saw happen last Monday and those events previously in the fall are the exception rather than a rule for the air traffic control system.
To help, the FAA deploying a temporary backup system to the TRANCOM facility in Philadelphia, which oversees Newark airspace, adding new high-bandwidth telecom lines to handle the radar feeds, and beefing up staffing with on-the-job training for some trainees who are certified in certain positions.
You're in the right location if you have your real ID or your passport.
All of it as the real ID rollout is finally here, though for now, passengers without a compliant ID can still likely get through the TSA checkpoint.
Bring your normal driver's license or whatever other ID you have used in the past to get on board an airplane, and we'll work from there.
So we've talked about, air traffic control staffing issues for some time. It takes time to get through the academy, about 3 months, and then before you are fully certified in a particular facility, a TRACON or a tower, that can take 18 months, in some cases even longer. And so this is not an easy or quick fix. And the overhaul to rebuild ATC, that will take a very long time, 3 to 4 years. Back to you.
All right, Tom, thank you.
This morning, we're getting a look at some brand new evidence in the murders of the 4 students at the University of Idaho.
Yeah, for more than 2 years, the lead up to this case has captivated the nation. Well, now our friends at Dateline NBC are bringing us this new evidence just weeks before the trial of accused killer Bryan Kohberger is set to begin. Dateline correspondent Keith Morrison has a preview.
Good morning. Our team has been following this case since right after that terrible night in 2022, and now we have gathered exclusive information that has not been seen or heard before publicly about the murders and the man accused of committing them.
In this house, just steps from campus, in the early morning hours of November 13th, 2022, 4 University of Idaho students, Maddie Mogan, Kaylee Gonsalves, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin, were stabbed to death. Their accused killer, Bryan Kohberger, faces trial this summer. He's pleaded not guilty. For the last 2.5 years, Dateline has been on the ground, reporting, gathering, and learning from people with direct knowledge of the case. We've obtained things that have never before been seen publicly, like these security videos from a camera on a house near the murder scene, videos that show a white sedan, a car that investigators believe was driven by Brian Kohberger, making repeated passes at the King Road house that night before the murders. With evidence like this and our reporting, we have assembled a timeline for the weeks, months, and days before and after the murders. Starting with a pool party Kohberger attended in July, just after he moved to the area in pursuit of his PhD in criminology. An exclusive interview with a woman who exchanged numbers with Kohberger, then did not return his text.
You know, the universe intervened and for whatever reason just distracted me from further engaging in that interaction.
We'll also reveal records from Kohberger's cell phone that are in the possession of law enforcement and Google searches regarding the serial killer Ted Bundy. We have also seen these: dozens of photos in Kohberger's cell phone, browsing history, women from Washington State and the University of Idaho, including close friends of the King Road victims. Dateline has also obtained records showing the details of what an FBI cell phone expert has claimed to be, in the months before the murders, 23 occasions when Kohberger's phone connected to a cell tower, providing coverage to within 100 meters of the house at 1122 King Road. And in the hours after the murders, details of the timing of phone calls Brian Kohberger made to a phone linked to his parents just before the controversial selfie he took. And we'll talk to the mother whose daughter was supposed to be staying in the house the night of the murders, but a change of plans may have saved her daughter's life.
How soon was it that you thought, my God, she was going to be there?
I didn't think about that right away.
Oh.
All I could think about was the kids.
Makes you sad too, doesn't it?
It does. Sorry.
A lot of families damaged in this. Angela Neve has told us that her daughter Ashlyn, Maddie Mogan's best friend, moved away from Idaho and now refuses to come home to visit because of the trauma associated with the murders. She's hoping some of that will change, and Ashlyn will start to grieve after Brian Kohberger's trial.
All right, Keith, thank you very much. Well, let's bring in NBC News legal analyst Danny Ceballos for more on this. Danny, good morning. So Kohberger's defense team has been pushing to take the death penalty sentence off the table should he be convicted, but these attempts have been rejected so far. When you look at some of this new evidence, what are the ways Kohberger may look to defend himself?
Look, I have never seen a defense team fight as hard as this defense team. They file so many motions, it's hard to even keep up with them. And some of them are on the borderline of fanciful or really, I would call almost hopeless. For example, trying to get the death penalty thrown out, that would be a major accomplishment because the death penalty has been constitutional for many years now, and it's been upheld. So some of these efforts have almost zero chance of success, but you have to admire the defense team for still fighting to try and take the death penalty off the table. It's not going to work for any number of reasons, simply because it's been constitutional for a long time.
Of the evidence Keith Morrison just laid out there, what stands out to you? What helps the prosecution most make its case?
Well, just as an aside, I was astonished to learn in that package that he was, getting someone's cell phone number, and it sounds like that woman may have narrowly escaped an unpleasant situation. So, but that's not really evidence that's going to be relevant here. There's so much evidence against the defendant in this case. It's hard to know where to begin. I mean, you didn't even have time to get into the DNA evidence on the knife sheath. You think the surveillance video, and by the way, this is in criminal cases everywhere. These Ring cameras are giving us tons of evidence in these cases, circumstantial evidence, usually to prove that somebody was somewhere that maybe they say they weren't at a particular time.
This trial set to begin in August. We still don't have any real insight into a potential motive here, even though that's soon. Do all these new details change the course, do you think, of where this case is heading?
Oh, reportedly, the prosecution is considering as a motive in this case that Kohberger may have been trying to impress a former professor. This is going to be critical because motive is not a required element of this and most crimes, nearly all crimes. However, prosecutors know that a motive is key. Jurors ask the question why. Even if the government doesn't need to prove why, they know that jurors want to know why. And right now, this is just seems like the theory seems like some heinous set of killings just for a thrill or to see if you can get away with it. That's going to be tough for the jury to buy. So a motive is going to be key, even though it's not essential.
All right, Danny Savalas, thank you very much.
Let's get a check on the weather now.
We have Angie Lassman here with your Morning News Now forecast. Hey, Angie.
Hi, guys. Good morning to you. We've got some busy weather ahead here over the next 48 hours, specifically for parts of the east, although right now most of us are dealing with quiet skies. That goes from Boston down to Washington, D.C., Raleigh. The only spot that we're really watching across parts of Missouri and Illinois, we've got some of those thunderstorms just south of St. Louis and a few of those near Cleveland working across the lakes. Here's what we're watching, though, as we get into the next couple of days. The flooding concern. We've already got flood alerts up for parts of the Northeast as we kind of gather some of this moisture and slide it up into the Northeast over the next 2 days. Here's where it'll be today. Essentially from Massachusetts to Tennessee is where we'll see the potential for some rain. We could see some spots of heavy rain, specifically across parts of the interior areas of that region. And then we really ramp that up here as we get into tomorrow. It's going to be a soggy day along the I-95 corridor. We'll likely see some delays when it comes to road and air travel, so heads up there. Boston, even into the evening hours, could see some of that rain, and we'll see the more scattered showers kind of on the backside of this system here for points south of New York into Washington, D.C. here as we get into the evening hours. Either way, this is going to give us the potential to see some flooding concerns, and we'll still be looking at some of that rain around for parts of northern New England, even as we get into your Saturday, although we'll see drier skies for New York City and points south. The strong winds and the cooler than normal temperatures will be left behind on the backside of this system, so we'll get a little bit of a temperature dip, and those breezy conditions will be here to stay as well. Rainfall through now through then looks to be pretty impressive in some spots. We need it, so we'll take the 1 to 2 inches in some locations, but upwards of 3, maybe even 4 inches possible. So no surprise that we've got those flood alerts already up. Big picture look for your weekend forecast. Yes, rainy across the east, but this is a look at Friday. We've got a lot of sunshine elsewhere, the Great Lakes, the Plains, even the Southwest and the Pacific Northwest, plenty of sunshine. It'll even be a record warm kind of day for the Southwest. We'll see some of that happening as we get into your Saturday. And then the sun returns for the Mid-Atlantic, the Great Lakes, the Plains, all will see some bright skies on Saturday while the rain focuses for northern New England and the Southeast. And then on Sunday, we get to celebrate our moms, the best people, right? Great for mom.
Great
from
for mom.
The Northeast to the Great Lakes. Out west, guys, we'll see those downpours, though, interrupting potential outdoor plans to celebrate mom across the Southeast.
All right.
Get your gifts.
Celebrate mom no matter what.
That's right. Every day.
Tomorrow is my mom's birthday. So
a double whammy.
Double whammy. Happy birthday, Mama.
Happy birthday to her.
She's not watching right now. That's right. Thanks, Angie. There is more to come on this hour of Morning News Now, including why those classic Mother's Day flower bouquets might just cost you a little extra green this year.
First, after the break, inside the ongoing investigation into the so-called Chilean bling ring that's not only targeting pro athletes and celebrities, but just normal everyday Americans too. Those stories and more up next.
Ukrainian officials say Russia has attacked their country on the first day of a 3-day ceasefire proposed by Russian President Vladimir Putin. The 72-hour pause in fighting coincides with a Russian holiday to mark the end of World War II. For more on this, let's bring in NBC News International correspondent Danielle Hamamdjian, who joins us with the latest. Danielle, good morning. So why did Russia propose this ceasefire in the first place? Remind us. And what do we know about today's attack?
Yeah, well, according to the Ukrainian foreign minister, from midnight to midday, more than 700 ceasefire violations were recorded. This would include Russian drone strikes and Russian attacks on Ukrainian troops. Moscow has denied these claims, saying instead that the Russian armed forces are, quote, strictly observing the ceasefire and that it's the Ukrainians who have attacked, violating the ceasefire nearly 500 times. This would include, they say, attacks on their troops from tanks and mortars. Now, Volodymyr Zelensky, it should be noted, had rejected Putin's 3-day truce proposal, calling it a theatrical performance. Why did Putin call this in the first place? Well, as part of the VE commemorations, there's going to be a big military parade in Moscow, but also a big portion of the population across Russia will be marching with portraits of dead family members. Somber war songs echo through the streets. 27 million people died there during the Second World War. So it is a sacred day for the Russians, and Moscow doesn't want anything disturbing the peace in the skies above.
Danielle, what about a permanent peace deal? I mean, something longer lasting, like the one that the U.S. was involved in trying to broker. Is there any progress there?
Well, the Americans have been trying and have been very frustrated by how slowly progress has been made. J.D. Vance was back in Munich, this time striking a more conciliatory tone. He said that every time you sit with one side or the other for an hour, the first 30 minutes are spent complaining and bringing up historical grievances. Take a listen to what the vice president had to say.
So I wouldn't say that the Russians are uninterested in bringing this thing to a resolution. What I would say is right now, the Russians are asking for a certain set of requirements, a certain set of concessions in order to end the conflict. We think they're asking for too much.
Vance also saying that there is a big gulf between the two and that the next step in these negotiations, Savannah, is getting Ukraine and Russia to communicate directly with each other. Back to you.
Danielle, the Chinese president, Xi Jinping, he's meeting with President Putin in Moscow as part of a 4-day visit. What do we know about this? What are we expecting to hear that they have discussed?
Well, the Kremlin is hosting a number of foreign leaders. Chief among them is the Chinese president, Xi Jinping. It was a red carpet welcome for President Xi, as Moscow hopes this will provide a diplomatic boost for the Russian leader at a key moment in the war with Ukraine. Both the Kremlin and Kyiv, of course, under pressure by the U.S. to get this ceasefire deal over the line. President Xi, of course, is locked in a tariff war with the U.S., and he's expected to sign a number of agreements with Russia during this visit. Putin told Xi he welcomed the transfer of Chinese technology to Russia and that Russia had become the largest importer of Chinese cars. Savannah?
All right. Danielle, thank you very much.
This morning, we're taking a closer look at a highly organized burglary operation known as the Bling Ring. It's made up of alleged criminals from South America. They're accused of using sophisticated equipment like drones and Wi-Fi jammers to case the houses of both high-profile athletes and even everyday families. Reporter Lou Raguse from our affiliate, Kara Levin in Minneapolis, takes us inside the investigation.
Sarah Shazer is not a celebrity or a professional athlete.
No, absolutely not.
But she shares some well-known company as a victim of an organized and sophisticated international crime ring targeting high-end homes across the country, a Chilean bling ring.
Within a couple of weeks, the detective in Eden Prairie was really great and called with this theory, which I thought was no way. It just sounded too big. But it turns out he was right.
The crime ring made national news last fall when millions of dollars of jewelry was stolen from the homes of NFL stars Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, and Joe Burrow.
This window was
at Sarah's home,
cut out like in a shape.
The burglars cut open a window to get in and went straight to the bedroom.
They were after the jewelry. They were after gold.
And they got a lot of Sarah's sentimental jewelry.
My wedding ring was off my hand because it needed a diamond replaced. And they took that.
10 days later, the burglars, Chilean nationals using fake Argentina IDs, were arrested in suburban Philadelphia after breaking into homes there. Location data from the rental car linked the suspects to burglars all across the country over 2.5 weeks.
The MOs are all the same, and it's the same that we've seen across the metropolitan area, across the country.
West St. Paul Police Chief Brian Sturgeon is deep into the investigation of the Chilean bling ring after 4 high-end homes in Sunfish Lake were hit, including former Minnesota Viking Linval Joseph's house. Other pro athletes affected in Minnesota are Carl Anthony Towns and Mike Conley. Twins owner Joe Polad's house was burglarized too.
So this is a little more sophistication than your run-of-the-mill burglars in the Twin Cities?
It is. It is.
From drone surveillance to this, a Wi-Fi jammer found in the car when the group in Philly was arrested.
A lot of alarm systems and video camera systems utilize Wi-Fi to operate. So these Wi-Fi jammers are able to then make those cameras or those security systems offline, put them offline, make them useless.
How you guys doing?
A federal investigation became public in Ohio when another group was arrested, one of them wearing Joe Burrow's Bengals hat with his LSU t-shirt in the trunk. Court papers say these suspects' cell phones were filled with photos of them posing with Burrow's jewelry and location data linking them to yet another group in Florida also posing with jewelry allegedly stolen from pro athletes. They are all now charged together in cases involving at least 6 professional stars. 2 people from a New York City pawn shop raided by the feds are also charged. The FBI saying they found up to $5 million in stolen property that the pawn shop bought from South American theft groups, including the Burrow burglars.
Some of that property I know stays in the country, but I know a lot of it leaves the country as well.
When the Chilean suspects leave the country, Chief Sturgeon says they are replaced by others using tourism visas for their crime sprees, most of them ultimately connected.
Are they all working for the same boss?
It seems like it's the same organized group.
We don't have the things of value that these sports people have, but it means a lot to us, and we worked hard for it. And then for people to just come in and think they can just take it, it's so aggravating.
When Sarah's burglars were arrested in Philadelphia, one of them had her wedding ring in their pocket. Police recently returned it.
It was a small consolation. It was great to get it back, though. I felt really good, and the detective said he's never seen it happen before, that somebody got something back.
While the federal investigations are as high-tech as the burglary ring they're trying to bring down, Sarah's case was solved with old-school detective work. Eden Prairie police matched a footprint in the fresh snow outside Sarah's window to the shoe worn by one of the Philadelphia suspects. Miguel Guzman Pardo pleaded guilty, making him the only thief in the more than 60 burglaries in Minnesota linked to the Chilean bling ring to be held accountable so far.
It's such a violation, and you want people to, I hate to say pay for what they did, but that there are consequences. What makes you think you can do that?
Fascinating look behind the scenes there. Thanks to Lou Ragoose for that report.
Well, coming up, freezing fact or fiction?
Yeah, after the break, we're going to dive into the science behind cold plunges, why new research shows they might not be so beneficial for women after a workout. Stay with us. That's next. We're back with new research that questions one of the more popular wellness trends on social media, the cold plunge. It's a form of post-workout therapy where participants dunk themselves in cold water between 50 to 60 degrees, usually for 5 to 10 minutes.
Whew, if you can make it that long. Cold plunges allegedly help with quicker muscle recovery and improved performance. But a new study reveals that it might not actually help women at all. NBC News national correspondent Yasmin Vasugian explains.
Cold plunges are hot right now.
Oh, that's cold.
From fitness influencers
3 minutes minimum, 6 minutes maximum at 48 degrees.
to A-list celebrities.
Come on.
Many swearing by it over recent years, saying it helps muscle recovery, boost your metabolism, regulate hormone production, improve circulation, and activate your immune system. And some medical studies do support the benefits, although the research is still scant. And now a new study suggesting that for women, taking the plunge might not cut it. After completing a rigorous workout, 30 women randomly dipped in hot or cold water. Researchers found compared to doing nothing, neither improved muscle recovery. And recently, popular self-help influencer Mel Robbins, a cold plunge enthusiast herself, having a viral moment on her podcast with women's physiology expert Dr. Stacey Sims, who says the water just doesn't have to be that cold.
Which is around that 55-degree mark, she'll end up with the same responses that a man has because it's not as a severe shock to a woman's body as it is for a man.
And it's not just about the cold plunges. Experts like Dr. Sims and others argue many widely held beliefs around fitness and weight loss, intermittent fasting, working out on an empty stomach, don't take the needs of women into account.
There are two different factors driving differences in how men and women respond to different types of therapies like cold plunges. One is physiologic. Men have less body fat than women. Number two is women in general have an instinct to conserve heat at a different rate than men do. The third are hormonal changes.
One analysis reporting only about 6% of exercise and sports science studies take menstrual cycles into account when designing studies. And those hormone fluctuations can impact the results. So, in the name of science, I went to the Ice Cold Club in Brooklyn to try it myself. Lauren Schramm is the club's founder and a global Nike trainer. She says it's not just about the body, but the mind.
The reason I started doing it was because of the mental health benefits. It's your mind, your body, and your nervous system. So it's kind of like a practice to managing stress, and it translates directly to other areas in your life.
Lauren then coached me through my own cold plunge experience. The water a cool 48 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yeah, you get used to it, right? It passes. Yeah.
And while difficult, I did feel better afterwards.
You did great. I'm so proud.
Revived. And at the end of the day,
what works for one person won't necessarily work for someone else.
And I'll tell you, some days the cold plunge feels horrible. It's like a mirror to what's going on in your life. We need to experiment with ourselves a little bit and not just take what everyone says and just do it.
It's all about what works for you.
Yasmin Vasugian, NBC News.
Doesn't work for me.
Doesn't work. I was gonna say, some journalists get to spend weeks in Italy right now, and some get to dive into a cold pool on camera.
What an assignment. She honestly handled that really well. I would have really made a scene, so good for her.
Jasmine. Thank you. All right, coming up, a friendly reminder that this Sunday, it's Mother's Day.
Unfortunately, though, not even mom is immune from all those tariffs we're hearing about from the White House. Why that classic flower bouquet might cost a little more this year. We're watching your wallet next. Welcome back. Big reminder for you. Mother's Day is this Sunday. But unfortunately, this year it could cost you a little bit more to spoil your mom.
That's because of all those new tariffs on imports, which include flowers, mostly imported those are, even the vases to display them. Our Emily Ikeda is here with how it all adds up and ways that you can save money on the holiday. Emily, good morning.
Hey guys, good morning to you. It's one of the busiest times of year for florists with prom, graduations, and of course, Mother's Day all in just a few weeks span. But this year, flower shops across the country are seeing a spike in the cost of both florals and supplies as tariffs take root. And now it's forcing some shoppers watching their wallet to get creative with those Mother's Day bouquets.
Flowers and Mother's Day go hand in hand for millions of Americans.
I recently received the most beautiful flowers.
But this year, that arrangement could cost you a bit more green.
What's the name of that white?
Peonies.
Oh, peonies.
Many florists, like Matlas Florists in New York City, import nearly all of their flowers from other countries. Hydrangeas from Colombia, roses from Ecuador, tulips from Holland. And because of recent tariffs and the global trade war, owner Yossi Benamou says they're now costing him roughly 10% more across the board. And it's not just the flowers popping up. The plastic and vases that come from China up at least 30% for this longtime business owner.
Are you having to pass some of those costs on to the customers?
I'm trying not to, so we can keep customers happy and come back. Some of them we have no choice.
Nearly 80% of fresh-cut flowers sold here are brought in from outside of the U.S. Imports of just fresh-cut roses totaling $800 million in 2022.
Flowers are not something that we can buy in advance and hold on to. They have to be cut fresh. Consumers are really going to feel that pinch when they're buying flowers.
Still, the National Retail Federation anticipates flowers to remain the most popular gift this Mother's Day, followed by greeting cards and special outings, with total spending expected to bloom beyond $34 billion this year. But no need to take extreme measures to save on costs.
Did you take the flowers at my mother's site?
What?
They wouldn't take the 50 at the flower store.
How could you do that?
Experts say to ask your florist for more commonly grown flowers in the U.S., like sunflowers, daisies, and lilies, or consider a new trend springing up, paper bouquets, with several companies offering evergreen arrangements.
This is so cute.
But Benhamou is hopeful his customers will still want to smell the roses.
There's no substitute for flowers, I don't think.
Okay, so if you're not doing real flowers, are there some alternatives to save money?
You can find cut out flowers on Amazon, fewer than $20, and you get that really quick shipping. And hey, there's no watering involved. Now, you don't get that aromatherapy with that. You could also go to the grocery store. I love me some Trader Joe's flowers, and then just make the arrangement at home.
That is the hottest tip. Is Trader Joe's flowers are so good.
Absolutely. And then if you're maybe not flowers, but you could get fresh plants as well. And because the majority of nursery plants are grown here in the U.S., so you don't have to worry about.
Here's a rosemary bush.
Honestly, or like a little snake plant. There you go. Also, really fun tip that I learned: if you put a penny, specifically an older penny, because they're made of more copper, it will allow your flowers to grow and last longer. So a little fun.
Has that worked for you? You've tried it?
Yes.
Okay. I'm always like, that seems fake.
But you need an older penny because they're made of more copper, and that's what's actually killing off the fungi and bacteria.
Wow. I should have tried that.
There you
A bunch of dying
go.
flowers.
Or grow your own flowers.
I know. I'm planting a bunch of flowers in my backyard, so I don't have to go through this. Thanks, Emily.
All right, we've got some money news with new numbers on jobless claims out this morning.
Yes, CNBC's Silvana Henao joins us with that breaking news and some other money headlines for us. Hi, Silvana. Good morning.
Savannah, Joe, good morning. That is right. We just getting in the latest snapshot on the economy and the labor market. We got jobless claims. That's the number of Americans applying for unemployment benefits fell last week despite heightened uncertainty about how President Donald Trump's tariffs will impact the U.S. economy. Jobless claim applications fell by 13,000 to 228,000. That was just in line with economists' expectations. All right, OpenAI has met with FDA officials to discuss the agency's use of AI to speed up drug evaluation and approvals. Wired reports they've discussed a project called CDER-GPT. That's a tool for the Center for Drug Evaluation, which regulates over-the-counter and prescription drugs. Now, it's not uncommon for drug development to take more than a decade to complete, and OpenAI's work aims to speed up a small portion of that pipeline. Netflix is going to start testing a TikTok-like feed of vertical video in its mobile app to help you discover something new to watch. From clips, you'll be able to watch the show or movie right away, or you can add it to your list of things to watch or pass the clip along to a friend. Now, Netflix is also rolling out a revamped design for its TV app, guys.
All right.
What's going on over there?
Thank you.
Interesting. All right, well, this week is National Nurses Week, and we are sharing the inspiring story of one woman with a special insight into the differences that nurses can make. After being cared for in the NICU as a premature baby, her own daughter was born early, leading in turn to a career helping other moms. Today, anchor Jenna Bush Hager has their story.
Caring for some of the tiniest and most critical babies is a labor of love for assistant head nurse Christine Parserum.
That's all you wanted, huh? Feeling better now?
Christine works in the neonatal intensive care unit at Flushing Hospital in Queens, New York. It's a place she has a special connection to because she too was a NICU baby in this very hospital. Born prematurely at 34 weeks, she's living proof of the miracles that happen here.
As you walk down these same halls where you were born, knowing that nurses cared for you the same way you care for patients, what's that like?
It feels amazing to know that I'm part of the journey. It feels like it was meant to be, right from where I started.
It's one of the most challenging moments of her life that she, of course, doesn't remember. But when her own daughter was born prematurely, weighing only 2 pounds 2 ounces, she learned how difficult it is for parents.
We were anxious, we were nervous, we were scared. It's just the idea of leaving your baby behind was very overwhelming.
During her darkest moments, it was the nurses that helped Christine see the light.
The nurses were amazing. Not only was she their patient, I was their patient too. I remember going into the NICU crying and just being so overwhelmed, and them holding my hand, just having me in their arms, letting me know it's gonna be okay.
Christine took her healthy baby girl, Emily, home 2 months later. Her family of 4 are finally together, but the nurses left her inspired. She decided to switch careers and enroll in nursing school.
You went back to school.
Yes.
To become a nurse when you had a toddler, a baby at home, which is a ton of work, but it was worth it.
It was definitely worth it. I still remember how they made me feel, and it's an honor to be able to provide that to someone else.
Turning her pain into purpose, Christine now uses her own experience to help the families of her patients, showing them photos of her now 10-year-old daughter and reminding them better days are ahead.
I love letting them know that even though our babies are so tiny, they grow by the second. But I do love sharing my stories because I do see that anxiety, and it does help.
This isn't an easy job.
There's never a dull moment in the NICU. There's some shifts that I work where we don't even get to take a break. Sometimes we can't even step away from our babies to even go to the bathroom.
You work 12 hours.
12 hours, yes.
And overnights.
Overnights, yes. It gets hard, but it's our love, it's our passion for what we do that keeps us in the game.
How about your baby? My baby's doing good.
Christine says her fellow NICU nurses are her family, helping each other through the most challenging days.
We definitely struggle alongside each other. We lean on each other. We give it our heart. We give it our soul. We love what we do.
It's a love that helps these precious babies thrive.
In the NICU, we see miracles every day. To work alongside a critical baby and then to watch that baby grow and flourish and graduate and go home, it's the best feeling ever. I can't see myself doing anything different.
Oh, thanks to Jenna for sharing Christine's story. What an amazing look.
Coming up, a field of dreams that's putting one small Texas town on the map.
It's a spitting image of Boston's famed Fenway Park that draws its fair share of fans, but for local teens, it's worth much more. In just a photo op will explain.
We're going to end this hour with a Texas couple bringing Fenway Park to the south.
It's a home run renovation project that's transforming teens' lives. NBC News correspondent Priscilla Thompson took a trip to Bells, Texas for a closer look.
From the green monster to the scoreboard, even the Sit Go sign towering over left field. It looks like one of America's most iconic ballparks.
The paint is green monster green. The yellow is foul pole yellow.
Wow. And so Fenway Park. Fenway Park. An almost exact replica wiffle ball field built by Stephen and Lana Newton in the tiny town of Bells, Texas. Fenway Park in Texas. Why?
I've been a Red Sox fan since I was 10.
So they built it, and the people have come.
Multiple times a day, people just pull up in the driveway and go out, and I walk and look around the corner, and they're on top of the green monster, and they're taking pictures.
But Lana and Stephen's mission is far bigger than a ballpark. Creating a safe space for teens in this small rural town of just over 1,500 people.
Adults make judgments on kids, maybe that life's not hard or they just want to play video games, and that's not kids. They're people and they're trying to figure it out, and life's hard for them too.
So you started with just 12 kids.
Right, I would stand over there at the TV and teach.
What began as a small Bible study in their living room
I've got 2 seats right here.
has grown to a weekly meeting of more than 100 kids, now held in their driveway turned dugout. All of it self-funded.
People ask all the time, like, what religion are you, or what church is this? But what do y'all teach them about that? We teach them about life. Yeah. We tell them the mistakes we've made, and we try to help steer them in the right direction.
Nearly a dozen kids have lived with the Newtons at their place, affectionately dubbed Home Run Ranch.
We had a young man living with us that just needed a fresh start, and his mom, she said, I think you should name it Home Run Ranch, because home has always been a place for kids to run to.
Hey! And run, they do. Satori Bagby is in 9th grade.
This place means it means a lot to me. Lana's lessons hits really hard in the heart.
I love it. I love it.
I know that no matter what's going on in my life, what's going on at school or in sports, whatever, that I always have this place and I can always come back, run home here.
When I think about sliding into home, I think about being safe. When kids run into home here, what do you hope they feel?
That, safe, loved, accepted.
The grace and mercy and love, forgiveness, all those things.
Sometimes I stand at the back of the room and I'm like, it's more than I'm just so proud of them. I'm so proud of this place. I just love it so much.
A field of dreams of a different kind that all started with a simple question. Want to have a catch? Priscilla Thompson, NBC News.
So neat.
Good for them. All right, that's going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now.
The news continues right now, though.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.